tuning in today, everyone. I just want to let you know my book is out and available on Amazon and Barnes& Noble. The name is Parents, Our Greatest Teachers. And now, back to our episode. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Alex Valgood, and this is Leap of Health. And today we have Nadia Krauss. She is a former corporate health coach, now promoting divinity. And I know you are an author of The Magic of Transformation, Igniting and Manifesting Your Soul Desires. And now you're promoting the Soul Health Mentor, and you also have a podcast, I believe. So that's incredible. And I know we're going to be talking today about sugar. Sugar is a big topic, but we're going to try to kind of like break it down and explain how it works in our body and why it's kind of like on the bad side. Like, you know, a lot of diseases come from that. And we kind of like all know that, but we're like, oh, I'll start tomorrow. And before we go into all that, tell us a little bit about your story and how you became this soul mentor coach now.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So I love that we're talking about the topic of sugar, and there's a bit of a story to tell where it will start making sense to the listeners. So I started in the fitness industry, and I had a little group training studio called Fitness for Body and Soul. And in the name, you can already hear that soul was always very important to me. I was 24 years young, and in the fitness industry, I got taught I can eat anything I want as long as I burn calories. No, you can't.
Right. Yes.
Because I was teaching like 20 different fitness classes a week. I was very stressed and I was turning to sugar for solace. And I gained 40 pounds because it doesn't work that way. And that led me to actually becoming a wellness and health coach. And I did it for myself first, but also to find out what is going on here, because I had clients and customers come to me saying, you're doing all these classes. And Germans are very direct. I'm originally from Germany. So they kind of just go, and you're gaining all this weight. What is wrong? What's going on?
Right.
And I don't know. I'm just really stressed. That's all I know. So that was my first confrontation with using sugar to fuel, but then having a negative manifestation in the sense of a precursor to diabetes 2.
Oh.
Yep. But I healed it, never took medication, lost all the weight, never had the symptoms again.
That's awesome. What were some of the things that you used to heal it and get better and not become a diabetic, actually?
Yes. So I already mentioned that I'm originally from Germany. My husband is American. So we were living in Germany. And because my husband is American, I had access to American books, to American TV. And I'm going to just share the story because it literally is how it happened. I was watching Oprah, and it was a show on diabetes. And I'm sitting there and I'm noticing I have all the symptoms. I gained 40 pounds and I have symptoms. And after watching that show, I realized, oh my goodness, I'm going to go on my healing path, but I'm going to make a career out of it. And that's how I made the decision to become a health and wellness coach. And then I used my body connection, my body wisdom, my intuition to find solutions. And I found a very specific solution. Would you like me to share more about that?
Yes, please.
So because I had this access to American books and American media, it was an American book I found, and it was in the bookstore on the military base in Germany, and it was called Your Last Diet. But that's not what caught me. What caught me was that it said the Sugar Addict's Weight Loss Plan.
Oh, okay.
And since I could relate to being a sugar addict because I was using sugar to deal with stress and for solace, for comfort. And this book was written by a doctor of biochemistry, Dr. Kathleen Desmaison. And she actually has a Radiant Recovery online support group where you go through a 7-step program. And I used that 7-step program to heal my biochemistry in 6 months, which means I stabilized everything, all the symptoms went away, and then I started losing weight again.
That's awesome. Can you share some of the steps that she mentions in her book?
Yes. So it's absolutely a lifestyle change. That's why it's called your last diet. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. So the very first, you learn foundations, solid foundations. Every single step is a solid foundation. So the step number one is having breakfast within the first hour of waking up, because if you wait for hours and hours, you start binging on sugar. If you
Mm,
don't eat within the first hour, make sure that there's enough protein in your breakfast, and make sure that you're eating a complex carb. So not simple carbs like white bread and sugary things, but complex carbs like whole grain oats. That's a good example for breakfast. There's bran and whole grain wheat and those sort of things. So that's step one. And then step two, you actually start with a food journal, because I'm a big fan of the mind, body, spirit connection.
mhm,
And this is how this program helps you see how there's biochemistry going on. There's like, what is insulin resistance? Why am I addicted to sugar? So all that is explained. And there's online classes that I did just to really get to the bottom of what was happening. And when you start doing a food journal where you actually write down when you ate, how you felt when you ate, physically and emotionally, you start making connections
mm,
where, oh, I'm craving sugar because I skipped breakfast. Or, oh, I'm craving sugar because I just had a really stressful day,
mhm,
that sort of thing. And then there's step number three, you focus on protein at every meal. And you can see how it's very step by step, and eliminating sugar is actually step 6. So you can see how it's
okay.
building up to that. And when you get to eliminating sugar, you've done 5 steps before it. And it's talking about refined sugar. So not necessarily sugar and fruit. That's something that you have to explore. How much can your body handle? I was okay with fruit at all. Fruit didn't trigger that addiction. Only refined sugar triggered my addiction to it.
Mhm.
So step number 6, you eliminate sugar, and it's actually easy. It's easier than you think when you prep for it.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, do you think that was the reason why she left it to the end?
Yes, it's a very, as I said, she's got a PhD in biochemistry. So she's a doctor of biochemistry, and she really understands biochemistry, and she really teaches that. And so as you're going through the program, you learn it, and it makes sense. And yes, there's an absolute system, because she understands biochemistry. She understands that if you go cold turkey on sugar, you're just going to relapse,
Mhm.
and maybe worse than before.
Yeah. Do you think what do you think is the impact if people do it cold turkey? What's the impact within their body if they're like, okay, that's it. I'm gonna just go cold turkey, no sugar ever, which we know that's a lie, but
So it's not sustainable. They're going to
Mhm.
relapse because there's no pleasure in it. And when there's no pleasure in it, you can't sustain it, because that's why you're eating sugar in the first place, to get pleasure.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I know you in the book she mentions that is an addiction to sugar. I think a lot of people sees addiction of things as like usually just those big drugs, right? Like I don't know, cocaine or any other big like alcohol. You have an addiction to alcohol or tobacco or something like that. But we have learned with like all these new studies and technology and all that that sugar is the number one um, thing that we're addicted to. I mean, I
Mhm.
will say now it's internet, but definitely sugar is up there.
Absolutely. So what people don't realize is that alcohol is sugar. That's what people
Yes.
don't realize. So that's the first thing I want to say. And then sugar. So these are the learnings that Dr. Kathleen Desmaison went through and shares with her community. And that's where I learned it first. And
Mhm.
it's not mainstream. It's not something that is taught, but it's so important because it gets to the root cause of why am I a sugar addicted? That was
Mhm.
my question back then. And then because I'm interested in mind, body, spirit, I
Mhm.
also realized that I'm looking for the sweetness in life in sugar where I can't find it. So there's all these things, and she explains the sugar sensitive brain from a very scientific standpoint. And then you learn that sugar actually has the same pain killing, like basically numbing your pain, physical or emotional effect as morphium, just not as strong.
Right.
So those are the things I learned in that community and through her work, and my mind was blown. My mind was blown because it doesn't get taught um, in a mainstream kind of way. Maybe that will change now.
Yeah, for sure. We're trying. We're making our best to change all that. What were some of the things that you did on your journey to eliminate your sugar, and what were um, how did your body start reacting to it? Because I know when we stop doing something that we already did for so long and that it felt so good,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what was the reaction of your body? How did you react to, for everybody that's listening to? Because I mean, changes are never easy,
Mm-hmm.
but not impossible for sure.
Yes. So I love that you asked that question because this was back. So let me think the years. This was a long time ago. So I was having these symptoms and this weight gain. I first noticed when I was 30 years old, and
Mhm.
I had run my business for 3-4 years. I'm now 47. So this was 17 years ago. And I was in Germany. And so I love that you asked this question because when I moved to the States,
Mhm.
I was in a completely new environment. I was culture shocked. I was surrounded by a junk food culture mentality, which I did not know, which military Americans in Germany would say things like, oh, the United States is a super stressful place and it's so chilled here in Europe. And I couldn't understand this. I couldn't until I was here. And there's sugar and everything. And I'm just gonna say it. I find it quite, I have to say it that way.
Yeah.
I find it quite disgusting that there's so much
Yes.
sugar in everything because it just doesn't taste good. And so then all of a sudden I noticed my body relapsing because all of a sudden all these hidden in the sense I didn't know because it's a new environment.
Mhm.
And I was surrounded by people. I lived in Georgia, and every state is different. And I realize every mentality and consciousness in every state is different. But here in Georgia, where I live, there's a very high level of junk food culture. There's hardly any good restaurants. There's nothing. It's really depressing for me as a European. So this sugar was seeping into my body. I was gaining weight again, and I was aware of what was happening. So the effect was that all these hidden sugars got me back into a kind of addiction of junk food, simple carbs, sugar. And
Mhm.
now, what do I need to do now, 17 years later, to go from relapsing to recovery? To I never ever got the symptoms again. So I never ever got the really metabolic syndrome of diabetes 2, which I feel very, very amazed by that
Mhm.
this healing journey that I did 17 years ago strengthened my body so much, but I did gain weight. So
Mhm.
now it's about losing the weight again. And my steps are, I'm just going to be really down to earth. It's homemade foods. It's meal prepping. It's going grocery shopping. It's not eating the junk that's out there.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's super important. I think, as you said, I'm also an immigrant from a different country. And when you come to States, I mean, it's great, right? There's so many things. I think that's like the main thing. There are so many things, such a big variety of junk food that looks amazing. All you want to do is try all these things, but at the end of the day, that's not a life that's sustainable, and it's not healthy, as we all know. you know Meal prepping and cooking every day at home, doing your oatmeal, know what you're putting in your food, know what food you're eating. I think that's the key, and I think it goes down to that, because I see it I work for spine surgeons. I've been working for them for a long time, and being at the clinic, being at the hospital, it's always like a fast-paced life. Go go go, see this patient, go over here, help this one, blah blah blah. And I see it with like the nurses and the assistants that are always buying lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, all this food that you buy, it has to taste good. So all the restaurants are gonna put a little bit more of sugar, put a little bit more of salt, which those two are so related to diabetes and to like our organs and like how the liver function and the kidneys function. So I think really taking that little time on prepping your meals, buying your food, one, it's going to save you a ton of money, like a
Correct.
lot of money. You're going to save
Correct.
a lot of money. Listen to this. You want money for vacation? Do your own food, make it yourself, buy your groceries, take your fruits for lunch and all that. I'm not saying don't never go to a restaurant. Do it. It's fun. I love restaurants. I love to discover new cuisines from everywhere. But don't do it every day. Don't do it as like a thing that you do every day all the time. You're going to save money. You're going to feel better. You know what you're eating. And you're not going to add all these extra additives to your body.
Yes. And since we're talking about sugar, that's what I
Mhm.
started doing as well. I started baking healthy
Mm,
snacks. And I always find there's in the recipes, there's just too much sugar in them. So
yes.
I use most of the time, I use if it'll say a half a cup, I'll you no, it typically would say 3/4 cups. I use a quarter cup. So I use a third of the sugar that the recipe actually says, and it's plenty sweet, plenty.
Mhm,
And when I do banana bread, I don't need to add sugar. Bananas are sweet.
mhm.
So that sort of thing, I have control over it, and I don't have control over what's out there because what's out there is not it's not for my benefit and my health.
Mhm. And we talk about protein because I think that's like a big one when you're cutting out all these extra sugar that you've been, eating for so long.
Mhm.
Um, Tell us a little bit why it's important to add all this protein every time we eat, just
So,
to kind of
mhm.
like not add all this extra that we're like, oh, I still want a dessert, or I still want this or that.
So part of doing the food, this is what Dr. Kathleen calls it. And I'm just going to share that experience because that's how I healed my sugar addiction. That's what I'm returning back to, making sure I have breakfast, having a food journal, mind body connection, making sure I'm making my lunches and looking at that protein. And one of the first things you learn with breakfast is
Mhm.
have enough protein. So there's this formula in the book which helps you calculate how much protein you're supposed to eat a day. And then the saying, the proof is in the pudding. I could talk about it all day long, but when you experience doing it and actually calculating how much protein you need and having a protein filled breakfast with a complex carb, the most amazing feeling is that I
Mhm.
started doing that and I wasn't hungry for 4 hours.
Mhm.
4 hours. Now, eat a McDonald's McMuffin, you're hungry after an hour.
Yes.
So that's why protein is so important. It helps you feel full. It builds your muscles, and there's more to it because it's always about the biochemistry. So when you have enough protein in your body throughout your day, your brain at night can use those protein chains, the
Mhm.
aminopeptide chains, to produce serotonin, which makes you happy. And when you're happy, you don't eat as much sugar.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And let's look a little bit now that you mentioned these emotions. I
Mhm.
know you're all about the soul and the transformation um, for your clients, when it comes to down to sugar. How do you explain them and how do you make them relate how they're feeling to what they're eating?
So you can imagine that I've got a little bit of a different approach now. So I used to work as a corporate health coach. And as a corporate health coach, what you talk about all day long, and it's probably the same in your field where you're working in a clinic and a hospital, it's all about the physical aspects, healthy diet, stress management, exercise. Everybody knows. Not a
Yes.
single soul doesn't know. So
Right.
the question is not, oh, you don't know what to do. The
Hmm.
question is, why are you not doing what you know you need to be doing to stay healthy? So my service is an emotionally transformative service. So we're looking at the emotions underlying the sabotage. So when someone comes to work with me, they go through something that I developed. It's called a soul realignment power retrieval process. Because when you're not aligned with your heart and soul, when you're not aligned with your values, when you're not aligned with who you truly are, life becomes really painful. And then we grab the sugar, we grab the junk. So can you see how it's a different approach? So we build the foundation of that emotional and mental well-being first. And then the client naturally wants to eat better, wants to eat healthier. And then it's also not that I tell them what to do, it's their intuition that guides them to what's right for them, because not everything is like, you need to do this because this is right. No, what's right for you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I like that because we're all different. We all do things differently. We like to eat differently. And, but yeah, just, knowing why we're doing the things. I think, I've done so many interviews by now. I think all the experts come down to that in order
Mhm.
to do any changes. I mean, I was talking to an expert in regards of habits, and she's like, yeah, before you change anything, you gotta ask the why, because you're not just gonna go blindfolded to be like, oh, I'm gonna wake up at 5 in the morning to work out because it feels good.
I love that you talked about habits, because it really is, first we make our habits, even if it is a sugar eating habit, that's a habit.
Hmm.
First we make our habits, and then our habits make us.
Hmm. I love that.
And that's something where you shine light on it. And so my approach comes from, because being addicted to sugar, in my experience, it had to do with my emotions of overwhelm, stress. I'm really young and I'm trying to run this business, but I actually don't know what I'm doing, because how can you when I literally just followed my heart at age 24, and I took a leap of faith that
Hmm.
then needed to be a leap of health,
Yeah.
because I got really sick. I was diseased. I wasn't well. Even though I didn't take medication, my body didn't feel right. And because I was in the fitness field, I wasn't going to let it get so far that I needed medication.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that you mentioned, because I know you're a little bit more in touch with your body. There's a lot of people that are that way, but there's a little more people not that way, that are a little bit more busy with life or not thinking about exactly how they're feeling because maybe they're caregivers or they have a job that is challenging. I mean, we all know this, like there it's life happening and we all have
Mhm.
different lives. What would you tell to those people that are maybe gaining weight, they're not feeling well, but they're not really paying attention? I mean, you at 24, you were like, hey, this is not normal. This doesn't feel good. And also I think comes because of your background. I think Europeans and other people that's not from the States have such a different life that we don't just gain weight in other countries. But here
Yes.
it's so normal. So people are like, ah, it's fine. I just, it's 10 pounds, or it's fine. I'll work out later, or I'll do this diet where I deprive myself to not eat anything and not lose them for the wedding or things like that. But it's not about that. I know you were aware of things, but what would you say to those clients that are like, well, it's not too bad? When is too bad? I mean,
Yes,
right?
yes, I love that you asked that because that's really important. So, as I speak about soul health on my own podcast, I'm talking about all encompassing health. So, everybody knows physical health and what we're supposed to do. But
Mm-hmm.
where it gets a little bit foggy and kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do, is when it comes to emotional health. Mental health is something that is talked about, but also very misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
And spiritual health is not even soul health, is not even talked about.
At all. They're like,
That
nope, you're
that
fine.
that's why I had to create a new term for it, because I wanted to talk about it. So what I do is I start by redefining health, because you actually said it. And when you said it, I was like, wow, realizing that is powerful. When you realize that it is accepted as normal to not feel great, whoa, whoa. And that's where it starts. I cannot accept for myself that I'm supposed to get old and feel terrible. That is something that is
Yes.
unacceptable for me, unacceptable. So it starts there. And then it starts by looking at this collective consciousness of defining health as just not being sick. As long as I'm not sick, I'm fine. I'm 30 pounds overweight, but I'm not sick. I'm
Mm-hmm.
30 pounds overweight, but everything's still functioning. And a little bit of pain is normal. That is unacceptable for me. So that is just my perspective. So obviously that's a belief system I have, which I can't just download into someone's brain. But if it's food for thought today for the
Mm-hmm.
listener, then I've done my job. Just redefine what health means, really.
For you, yes. Especially, I mean, everything that you were saying, it make me think of, all those families that, the mom is a little bit overweight. And as we said, all these things happen not because we want to or we do it on purpose. There's a lot of families out there that, maybe the mom needs to go to two jobs and she suddenly gain weight, or maybe after birth, she never lost the weight, same as the dad. I mean, there's a lot of all situations, and we're not shaming anyone. We're giving some examples of like, look, that's how the mom and dad gain weight, and they were busy. They were taking care of, I don't know, their parents, someone, financial things. Like, we don't know, right? But then you have this kid that also is like 10 pounds, 20 pounds overweight. But then their whole, his whole life or her whole life, he is like, well, that's, as you just said, and I mentioned it, we start seeing it as like, well, it's normal. My parents look that way, they seem to be fine. I don't know, my aunt looks that way, it's fine. I'm sure I'll be fine, especially in kids, because they're gonna feel okay for a long, long time, until they're like in their mid-20s, mid-30s, or whatever. That's when they're like, oh, well, there's no going back from like your severe diabetes or heart problems or things like that. All these really bad diseases that come from sugar and not being aware of what's the normal. you
Yes.
know
So you just mentioned something that was my world when I was working as a corporate health coach. The reason that companies hire corporate health coaches is because, and I'm just going to use the terminology that is used around this in Germany. In
Mhm.
Germany, because it's a little different, it's a cultural thing. In,
Yeah, of
in,
course.
in the States, they don't talk
we,
about it. And
we sugarcoat things.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, no,
Tell us how it is.
yeah, Germans are very direct. So basically, when I was going through my training and schooling to become a health and wellness coach, diabetes too is talked about as lifestyle diabetes. That is what it's said in Germany. And here it's sugar coated and foggy and strange, and it also is referred to, I've heard terms like incurable, which is not true because I cured it, right? I'm living proof.
Yeah.
So Here, education is necessary. Diabetes 1, you're born with, and that is definitely something that cannot be reversed because it's genetic. You were born with a pancreas that doesn't function in the way it's supposed to. And in a worst case scenario, parents will have to shoot insulin into their little babies. That's a worst case scenario if it's really bad. And usually it kind of manifests around 10 years old. But I've heard of babies, and I've heard
Yes,
of toddlers 3
me
years
too.
old. And so that's the first educational piece. So I can own what I did to my body. So
Yeah.
back then, when I developed metabolic syndrome, I was breaking my pancreas. I was making it not be able to function in the way that it's supposed to because I was loading my body with sugar. So if I created that, I can uncreate it. And so that's why I went on that healing journey. And now just to go back to the what families are experiencing, I would say have a look and a listen if your company offers health and wellness coaching. That is what your corporate health coach is there for. There will be lots of different tips when it comes to your nutrition, to your stress management, lots of activities, and they can be fun. And there's also so many things that your company is trying to do for you and your health. So that is absolutely doable, but it doesn't mean it's easy. And that was my frustration. My frustration as a corporate health coach was that I could never go deep enough because I'm someone that goes to root causes in my work. And I was also someone that was getting unhealthy in a very toxic corporate environment. So that's where I gained the weight because I was turning back to sugar for solace. So I had to take my own advice. Sometimes changing your work environment is the healthiest thing you can do for yourself to start eating right. And that's what I had to do for myself. So that's all I can mention. Like, I know stress is huge in the States. I saw it every day as a corporate health coach. It's debilitating, it's numbing, but I can only control what I do, right? I can't, so I can make decisions that get me back on track.
Yeah, for sure. And I know a lot of people that probably are listening are like, well, I can't leave my job, lady, which is fine. Like, we understand like all these things that life has, and sometimes we cannot leave our jobs for certain things, as I mentioned, family, kids, and whatever. But something that you just said, and it's very powerful, is like you could control what happens to you, right? I know work might be stressful, life is stressful, kids are stressful, all these things that you might have. And sometimes we cannot control that, but you can control what happens to you, and that's power to you. And what can you do? It's eat well. Stop eating out, because by you bringing your lunch, you know what has you know what you're gonna eat, you know what your food has, you know what your snack is gonna be. It's not added sugar to cookies, or even like all these, because we also live in this culture of like protein bars, protein this, protein that, but also all those things have all these fillers, or we call them fillers, that companies add to this product so it tastes good, so it lasts longer, so it doesn't cram, so it keeps its shape. It's a lot of chemistry happening so you can eat this beautiful protein bar. But
And
instead of that,
it's so easy to just boil eggs and eat cheese sticks.
you just read my mind. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, like literally, I was gonna say that. Like, it's so easy to just, have I don't know, 5 boiled eggs in your fridge. And guess what? In the morning, you're busy. You have to do the kids' hair, whatever, homework, you're finishing kids' homework, or you're doing your project. I don't know, whatever it is that life is happening to you and you're running in the morning, guess what? You can go in the fridge, grab that boiled egg, eat it. I mean, that's going to be so much better than eating a protein bar that has like about the same protein. And now you're adding preservatives, chemicals, and all these things that are not needed for your body, that might be adding to all these sugars that are unneeded. So definitely something, and it's so cool. Like it just went like bling in my mind. We have the one power that we have in life, our one superpower is to control what we eat. What do you think?
Yes. And if you are noticing that you are an emotional eater, there's tools for that. So there's tools for everything. It really just starts with that your personal definition of health, and if that is acceptable to you. If it is acceptable to you to gain weight, to have pain in your body, to take medication, and to get less and less vibrant as you age, then that is your choice. There's no judgment in it. It has to do with a belief system and you accepting that as true. But if it's not true for you, for me, it's not true. It's not how I want to live or die.
Mhm.
So then I am solution orientated, and I'm looking for the solutions that will help me overcome emotional eating. And I'm mentioning that because eating sugar is an emotional habit. And I'm speaking from my experience. It wasn't that my mind didn't know that it was bad for me.
Mhm.
It was emotional pain I was experiencing, and I was medicating with sugar. So that's why this mind body spirit program that I discovered for myself based on biochemistry was my way to go. So that was important to me, and that's something that sometimes is missing in the advice. It's the mind body spirit connection, and someone that doesn't have emotional eating at the root cause of their addiction, be it sugar addiction, they're not going to understand someone that is addicted to sugar because of emotions. Does that make sense?
Yes, for sure. I
So,
think that the knowing of the why, as we've been mentioning for like an hour now, it's super important. And I think, and some people might be like, well, I'm not fat, I'm fine. But it's not that you're fat or you're gaining weight or doing that. It's what sugar is causing to your body and how you're gonna be aging. That's a little bit of that aspect, because there are some people that are not gaining the weight, but they're still eating a lot of sugar. What's that gonna look in like 5 years, 10 years?
so one thing I'll be really honest with you. This is also a cultural thing. So what I noticed when I was in the American corporate health coaching world,
Mhm.
there was a lot of pointing fingers, and if you do this, this is going to happen. So I, as a German, don't do that.
Mhm.
So you don't get shamed for using tobacco. You don't get shamed for sugar addiction in Germany. You don't get shamed for it because there's a different healthcare system. Everybody's taken care of. So I have to just really be honest with you. I can't do it. I can't say, oh, I'm going to point the finger at you. And if you're eating sugar, that's bad. And even if you're thin, I just don't do that.
I see. I see. Yeah, for sure. I think what I was thinking on that question, it was more like I think people don't understand the concept of actually you don't have to be overweight
Mm-hmm.
to be, um to you don't have to be overweight to be paying attention to your health pretty
Mm-hmm.
much. So even though you're not overweight and you're maybe like okay weight, but you're consuming all the sugar, I think my point was because I am with you.
Mm.
This whole shaming, it's definitely not okay. But I think we should also start becoming aware of that. Even though you're not overweight, you might be causing inflammation in your body. You might
Yes.
you might be causing all these other things that sugar can cause to have
Yes.
other illnesses on the long way. And I think that's important for everybody to know that although you are not overweight,
Yes.
you
Now
do
I
have
get.
to, yeah, you do
Yes.
have to be aware of all these information. uh I mean, like I have my best friend, she's like, well, I'm fine. And I'm like, you look fine. Definitely. But eating all these cookies as breakfast, are not going to be great for you in 5 years for sure.
So then I can answer the question. Yes, absolutely. So then I would recommend paying attention. And then I can actually give an example. I can give an example of a former, because I don't work in the corporate field anymore, but this was a former participant in the wellness program that I was seeing, and not overweight, perfect blood work, everything like looks good on paper, everything
Yes.
looks good. And so you don't see participants like that very often because everything is fine. But you do see them at least once or twice in a year. And at one point, I'm not going to push anything that you don't want to do because you're not going to do it anyway. So I
Right.
just end up asking questions. So the question would be, well, what habit would you like to work on this year? Is there something that you've noticed that's not working out for you? And obviously I was dependent on the person having noticed something. And luckily she has. Luckily she noticed, oh my goodness, I think I kind of have a Splenda addiction. So it's not sugar, right? It's like, oh, this is okay, it's Splenda, but I'm really suffering from headaches, like major headaches. And I think, and she made that connection because that's the body wisdom, the body intelligence, the intuition, letting you know it's that nagging feeling where you know something's not right. And she started feeling that and said, like, I'm going to get rid of that. I'm not, because I think it's causing my headaches. 6 months later, she was headache free and Splenda free.
Love that. Love that. Yes. I mean, there's so many things that we can just make better because you might feel, okay, great. Right now, I'm not overweight and all these things. But there's always this one thing that might be, causing something a little odd. And as you said, there's this body wisdom that we always know, even though sometimes we're like, oh, later, I'll think about it later. But that's super, super important. What are some of the things that you work with your clients for them to make this mind, body, soul connection as they're working in their transformation?
Yes. So as they are working with me one-on-one, there's a very specific container that I call soul realignment. And then as you align to your soul, heart and soul, there's also like a power retrieval. You're able to come back into your power. And that is a very unique and very bespoke service. So I can't really generalize because it's so different from person to person. But what I can say as a general message is the reason I did launch the Soul Health Mentor podcast is because not only did I need to talk about soul health and new concepts, but it's all about out of your mind and into your heart wisdom, because your mind is got many aspects. There's so many aspects to your mind. You have 3 different brains, you have 5 different brain waves. There's the conditioned mind, and I'm talking about the conditioned mind and the saboteur. The mind is telling you, oh no, later. Oh no, later. I have time. Oh no, later. But if you get out of your monkey mind and come into your heart, that's where your intuition lives. That's where your wisdom lives. That's where that whisper is whispering at you, you need to quit that Splenda habit. That's your heart telling you. That's your soul telling you. But the mind ignores it because that's the rational mind. Oh, I don't have time. Oh, I'm so stressed. Oh, I can't do this. And it's really promoting that out of your mind and into your heart wisdom. That's what I promote with clients and community meaning the podcast. And with clients, it happens very uniquely, and it's a bespoke service. So it's hard to talk about because it's so different from client to client.
No, but yes, I love that. I love that you, as many other as experts that I talk to, we need to, and I don't get tired of saying it. We have to start seeing all these different bodies of ours as a whole system: mind, body, soul, energy. I know there's 7. I can never remember them, but but seeing all these different parts of us as one, I think that's like one of the keys to anything, to make ourselves anything. The sky and beyond is the limit to to make us better, especially when there's something already physical manifesting, right? Like in our body, like something here, our heart doesn't feel good, our stomach doesn't feel fine. When I eat, it's not pleasant. Things like that. I think having that connection of mind, body, and soul. Why do I feel this way? Why do I keep eating this?
Mhm.
I think it's like super, super important. And having coaches that tell us and guide us, I think that's one of the main points. Why do you think coaching it's like a big thing? Because a lot of people might be listening to this and be like, nah, I can do it myself. I'll just, quit sugar tomorrow and fine, I'll be fine.
Yes. So coaching, I think, has had this, because this didn't happen 30 years ago. 30 years, there wasn't this wave of coaches or mentors. And I call myself a mentor because I walk my talk and I take my medicine and I lead by example. So what I
Mhm.
speak of, I've applied myself. And coaching just means offering tools and resources so that the person can find their own solution. And yes, of course, they can make the decision, I'm doing this on my own. But if you find yourself a year later, still where you were a year ago, then you might want to have a coach or a mentor if you're serious about changing your life. So, of
Mhm.
course, everything is your choice, and it doesn't always have to be a coach. It can be resources like this one, like this podcast, educating yourselves. It can be books. I mentioned a book by Dr. Kathleen Desmaison. You can check out that book. There's an online community. It doesn't have to be a one-on-one coach, but one-on-one is just faster. That's a personal choice. You can choose a group coaching or group support group. You can choose a book, or you can choose one-on-one. It's something that I find it interesting that people say, "Oh no, I don't need a coach," because I'm a coach and mentor, and I let myself be supported. It's absolutely a pleasure for me to have a support system. So why
Yeah.
would I deny myself a support system? That's how I view it.
No, for sure. I think that also people don't understand that concept, and I love that you mentioned having a coach is having an access to all these different tools that we might not know that we have, we might not remember we have them, because I feel like we like by now we see so much things and information on social media that a lot of people know a lot of things, and they will say that like, oh, it's fine, I know it, I've heard of it, yes, 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 on all this. But I think having a reminder of like, but are you doing it, having someone that keeps you accountable, or even having someone to go back and be like, what was that thing that you said about sugar, am I supposed to do this or that? I think it's a great thing. And as you mentioned, not everybody needs a coach, but that, you could have all these tools, mentor as your book. You could use the book, you could use a podcast, you could use all these free tools out there to guide you and use that to mentor you.
But you said something really key. And the key was, yes, a lot of people know things, but what I always say, knowledge without action is just that, it's knowledge, nothing else, nothing changes. So information without implementation changes nothing. So a coach and a mentor and a commitment on your part in investing in that is also you holding yourself accountable. It's
Mhm.
accountability to wanting to change, to wanting to transform. And typically when I work with a coach and mentor, then there's week to week tasks, there's week to week intentions. So that ensures that I'm not just gathering information, but I'm also implementing what I know.
Yeah, and I think that's super important to take action on what you really want. Remember, yourself is your biggest investment. So why not? You are value, your value is so much high, so much higher, that why not invest in good food? Why not invest in yourself? Why not invest on a book for yourself? It's kind of like one of those, as you're in the airplane and they tell you, before you help anyone, help yourself. And I think that's like a really big one. You can't, you can be there for your family, you can be there for your friends, or whoever else that you might want to help, or whatever it is in your life, if you're not whole, if you're not there for you. And I think this sugar conversation is so important, because as you have mentioned, and I mentioned, sugar is like a big part of our lives.
Mm.
And the more aware we are, and the more aware we know what sugar does to us and the consequences in our health, I think it'll be better for us.
Yes, yes. And taking charge, just taking
Taking
charge
charge.
of your health, and also realizing that blindly trusting the food industry that puts all these things in your food, that is giving your power away to outside sources, because you're blindly trusting that they have your best interest at heart, which they don't.
Yes, drop the mic right there. So make sure know what you're eating, do your best to eat organic, cook your food at home, meal prep. It's fun. You're gonna eat better, more delicious, tasty food. I promise you that. This conversation has been super amazing. Thank you for being here today. Before we go, is there anything else you would like to share with us?
I just wanted to chime right in. I've enjoyed this conversation so much, and thank you for giving me the opportunity of being here.
No, thank you. Thank you. I think we need to keep on talking about all these topics that are so important, that we all know, but we need a little reminder here and there. So, if you want to and feel like you need a change, today is the day. And if anyone wants to like get coached by you, get your information, get your book, get in contact with you, or find your podcast, where can they find you?
So you can find everything on nadiakrauss.com, all the social media handles, testimonials of my work, and a link to the podcast. Everything on that page, nadiakrauss.com.
That's awesome. Also, I'll be putting all her information on the show notes. So if you're driving right now, you don't have to like, oh my God, what was it? What was it? Don't worry about it. I'll put it on the show notes. You'll have all her information. If you need to know anything else about my show and everything that I do, remember you can find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram as Alex Valgood. You can go to my website, alexvalgood.com. Remember, my book is out. It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can find it there. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. You're going to love the book. If you want to leave me a review or a comment, I will love that. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And thank you for joining us.
Thank
Have
you.
a blessed day, everyone.